Welcome to Belmont Poetry Night. I'm Monica Korde, your host and the Poet Laureate of Belmont, California. We meet on the third Tuesdays of every month to celebrate the spoken word as makers, listeners, and admirers of poetry. We come with featured guests and an open mic, inviting readers of all ages. After gathering for several years at our favorite physical venue, the Belmont Library, since the pandemic, our thriving poetry circle has transitioned to this virtual space, and I'm grateful this allows me to welcome poets and listeners from across the globe. Each month, when I see this Zoom room filling up, every time I see new and familiar faces, I feel a surge of energy and happiness and so much gratitude always. Thank you so much again for joining me and zooming in. And as tradition goes, I'd love to know where you are joining me from. So please share in the chat. And here we go. Happy National Poetry Month, everyone. I'll be partial and say this is the best time of the year. If you want to see all the poetry and its makers come into their own being, April is your month. And I feel so fortunate to be living and creating as a poet in this exciting time when we are surrounded by diverse voices who are writing, sharing, listening, and truly caring for this art form. Poetry is a matter of life, in words of Lucille Clifton, not just a matter of language. And for me, these words have become a sort of motto, especially in my work as the Poet Laureate and my ongoing initiative called Project Poetry 360 that aims to engage the community and make poetry a part of our everyday lives. These words by Clifton, I thought they fit in perfectly as a theme for our poetry night today, a guiding phrase to lead us onwards as a way of honoring and celebrating the many voices who have contributed not just words to a page, strung one after the other, but who, through their constant work, truly remind us of poetry's beauty and power and its worth in our life. Here's a poem I'd like to welcome you with that also shines light on this thought and reminds us that poetry makes sense when things stop making sense, that poetry can travel distances and be with us and connect us, especially during difficult times. Written by Naomi Shihab Nye, this poem is called Every Day as a Wide Field, Every Page. 1. Standing outside, staring at a tree, gentles our eyes. We cheer to see fireflies winking again. Where have our friends been all the long hours? Minds stretching beyond the field become their own skies. Windows, doors grow more important. Look through a word, swing that sentence wide open. Kneeling outside to find sturdy green, glistening blossoms under the breeze that carries us silently. 2. And there were so many more poems to read, countless friends to listen to. We didn't have to be in the same room. The great modern magic. Everywhere together now, even scared together now, from all points of the globe which lessened it somehow. Hopeful together too, exchanging wings in the dark, the little lights blinking. When your hope shrinks, you might feel the hope of someone far away lifting you up. Hope is the thing. Hope was always the thing. What else did we give each other from such distances? Breath of syllables, sing to me from your balcony, please. Befriend me in the deep space. When you paused for a poem, it could reshape the day you had just been living. Thank you. Such a heartening piece, right? And so inspiring in so many ways. Nye, a Palestinian-American writer, among many other accomplishments, has served as Poetry Foundation's Young People's Poet Laureate in the year 2019 to 2021. And this title is given to a living writer in recognition of a career devoted to writing exceptional poetry for young readers. And this is what I love about work that is happening in the field of poetry. It all begins with small steps, like creating laureate positions in each city or county, issuing Poetry Month proclamations. And I love that these positions are not limited to adults anymore or established poets, but they are also accessible to new and emerging voices for our youth who have great love, talent, and intention for bringing poetry to the community. Tonight, we have with us a formidable youth voice, a rising high school senior who has earned several important positions in poetry from a very young age. And I'm most thrilled to welcome Sarah Mohammed as my featured poet on this platform. And before I pass the mic to her, here's her introduction. Sarah Fatima Mohammed, daughter of Indian Muslim immigrants, is the 2021-22 National Student Poet of the West, the nation's highest honor for youth poets, and the 2022-23 Vice Youth Poet Laureate of Santa Clara County. Her work appears or is forthcoming in The Rumpus, Adroit Journal, Frontier Poetry, Wildness, Soft Blow, Pank, and Diode, and has been recognized by the National Young Arts Foundation, Poetry Society of the UK, Claudia Ann Seaman Awards, and Hollins University. Her chapbook of poems, Take Me Home, has been released by Ethel Press and is featured at the Harvard Schellinger Library in their collection of women-created zines. And the mic is all yours. Such a pleasure to have you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Monica, for introducing me. And thank you to everyone who's here today. I think I see some familiar faces, which is so lovely. And I really think that, Monica, just watching you organize this event and put in your care into making this really special is, I think, really inspiring to see what you do with your position and your work. So I'm grateful for that, and grateful that you invited me. I have a smattering of poems that I'm going to read, and then in between them, I'll talk a little bit. But I want to start off with this first one. It's called Mother and I Pray While Sleeping. Moons empty in the whisper of space between us. Mother's ankles roll into my calf, brimming with silver, with sleep. The night is made of photographs. We sleep over the prayer rug, woven from all the daughters that have pressed their lips to it and swallowed. Kitchen door creaking, the door that never stays closed, always making a sound. In another world we too speak, even if it's just to Allah, even if it's not pretty, even when men cover our mouths with cardamom and bruised fists. I don't know what mother's voice sounds like. I don't know how the words mother's voice sound in my own mouth. Nobody has taught us to open, not even our mothers. For now I close my eyes and dream of a begging where all the words start with I want. I think this poem takes some of the intimacy and the vulnerability that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I actually met Monica first at the South Asian Poetry Festival. And it was my first time, I think, just being surrounded by so many South Asian writers, like reading their work. And I was there by myself, but I think I still felt held in that space. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Rootless. And I think that in this poem, I wanted to evoke that gravity of togetherness that I feel when I get to be with other poets, and when I get to be in poetry spaces. I feel like that brings out the best self in me, or the person who I want to be. Rootless. We were born rootless. Our bodies fell from some place we could not name to earth, bones soft and oily, rain collecting right above the inside of our elbows. God didn't give us last names, only relics from another life. Copper buckets, spools of dark smoke, a river where we waited and waited and learned the word for clean. We were born rootless. When our hair curled against the ground, we pieced the strands back together as letters. Words wilted in our mouths, then bloomed, soft smatters, fertile vowels whisked into quiet accents. We were born rootless. We didn't know the rules, so we brought the sun to our bellies, cooked our faces in light.
Oh, that was stunning. What opening pieces, Sarah. Thank you so much for reading those and offering those pieces. I think it's remarkable to see so much wisdom coming through those pieces at such a young age. And let me just go back to the final lines of your poem, Rootless. I just Googled it up quickly as you were reading it, and I would love everyone to listen to these lines again as the poem closes. We were born rootless. We didn't know the rules. So we brought the sun to our bellies, cooked our faces in light. What imagery! Absolutely brilliant. And I feel that this is what I would like to enter into a conversation with you about is tell us about your writing origin story. How did you come to poetry, and when did you become deeply or seriously involved with your art?
Thank you for that introduction and for reading my work with that care. I think it feels like poetry has been in me ever since I was a little kid. And I remember my teacher had us send a letter to our 8th grade self when we were in 5th grade. And I remember like so vividly writing about language and not being able to pinpoint what made it so special for me, but knowing that I loved it, and coming back to that clarity. I think writing has always been a place of like deep clarity for me, to know like I want to do this, and it's been a through line, I think, through high school. I know I've seen some of you on the Zoom before, and I think I've been able to read and share my work and have space to do that. But I really feel like as I settled into language and found a way to express my thoughts through poetry, it guided me and it taught me about my own thoughts and gave me clarity on what I want to do and where I want to go. So I think that's what that's where poetry began for me, was in its clarity and in the way that it guided me.
I can see that the clarity that you talk about, it does come through instantly as soon as you offer these pieces to us. And one of the things that I was personally curious about, Sarah, is that as a child, as a young person, did you get any professional help in working on that language that you talk about, or was this something that came naturally to you, or it was honed at home? Anyone else making poetry around you?
Yeah, in freshman year, I did this summer program, this online writing program, and I met some people, some poets that I still stay in touch with, and still talk to. And I think that program was really formative for me to see other young writers.
Mhm.
There weren't a lot of people interested in poetry at my school, but when I found a community where we could just spend all day writing poems, where I remember one August, it was hot outside and it was the COVID summer, so we weren't going out, but we were all writing poems every day of August together and like sharing them on Discord, and that made me so happy. And I think that I really see writing as like intertwined with community now. And I feel like when I spend good time with my friends, it feels like a poem. It really does. But I think there's like this intentionality and care that is rooted in language, and just learning from my peers who were also writing poetry
Mhm.
was what expanded a lot for me. So I think that was the nexus of help, was just knowing other writers my age and getting to work with them.
Well, that's fantastic, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing that bit and letting us glimpse into that part of your life. I think, just as you said, that when we met at the South Asian Literature and Arts Festival, it was amazing to see we were surrounded by so many writers of coming from the same community, and there is a certain comfort and assuring feeling in that. And I see the same reflect in work that we are doing as poets. As a poet, also, if you see poets of your age doing the same thing or working on the same thing together, I think it's extremely reassuring, and it's encouraging, inspiring constantly. So yeah, I can see that you are on your way to inspire so many more people, and you already have. So let's hear a few more pieces before we take the next question.
I would love to.
Thank you.
The next set of poems that I have center around Kumbakonam, the Indian village where my parents are from and where they grew up before immigrating here. And I think the place is really special to me in being able to name a group of people that I can call my people so unequivocally, and being able to point to a place on the map and know where I come from, um, feels really special to me. These poems trace my feelings of comfort and calmness associated with that home. And this first one is called Self-Portrait as Kumbakonam. All winter I braided the village girl's hair, humming, slipping papaya and hibiscus along the pleats. I made orchards of dark silk, fruit fanned like the hymns of mothers, hot winds unfurling their voices. It was the secret of the village girls, the beautiful things they kept with them in their hair, fruit juice soaking their necks. In front of the men, hijabs shrouding the gardens blooming from their scalps, The village girl smelled like rain and settled in ovals, facing their bodies, soft feet touching the center like an offering. Mostly I rested with them, trying to warm the loose soil of the ground with my hands. We spoke of how we wanted to become as gentle as our mothers, who massaged mint leaves into mutton and, chins tilted to watch the sky, knelt for salat quietly, generously, like a deep breath, limbs and murmurs pooling on the prayer rug, like a garland made from only light. Salat. Mother presses her palms to the Quran, grasping the familiar cover, oiled with their dutiful use and soothed in linen like a blanket, before lowering it to her belly. When we are not praying, she rests the book on this highest shelf of our home. So he can watch over us, she tells me, stroking my small forehead at night, bed sheets lapping our shoulders, and the Quran, a street lamp held above us, yellow bright and gentle. Before Mother opens her mouth to chant the verses, I know worship has begun. Mother facing the shelf and raising herself onto her toes as if to say, yes, I am reaching for you. I am reaching to hold you, you who are holding me. And I follow Mother across the room. We peer into the sink basin while it fills and drag our feet through the water, rushing then to the prayer rug, rushing then to bow and to sing. How many years have I prayed with Mother, still learning the movements of her devotion long after those early years where all I knew was how to follow her, my hands clutching her hip. Even now, though I know how to perform the rituals by heart, I stay with her and around her, because I love our faces, softened with care as they tilt back, splashed in ceiling light, as they call and call, Mother's finger curling again to guide me to the right verse. The Arabic, a phrase I recognize from Mother's teachings months before, a phrase meaning together.
Thank you, Sarah. What a beautiful piece, and just uh, gorgeous in the way you delivered it as well. I think the piece really comes through alive in your voice, especially in the movement of your breath and where you take a pause at every line break or every word. I think it just adds more and more layers to your poems. And uh, writing poetry, working as a poet is one part of who you are. But I'd like to know, as a youth poet, being in these different positions, uh, how that journey has been. And uh, Janice Sapigao, who served as the Poet Laureate of Santa Clara and started Santa Clara County's first Youth Poet Laureate program, said that poetry often can serve as an entryway to get young people involved politically and within their communities. And it also gives them a sense of agency that's otherwise hard to come by. And I'd like to know what inspired you to apply to be the Youth Poet Laureate, and what does a Vice Youth Poet Laureate role entail? And I have another connecting question to it, but I'll let you respond to these first.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Janice and her words about youth agency, because I think Janice has really inspired me a lot, and she is what inspired me to apply and be a part of the Youth Poet Laureate program. I think that I see her as someone who is so supportive and who holds her role with a lot of intentionality and grace and tenderness too. And the way I think as a young person to be treated like that and to be like so valued for your time and like honored for the work you do is something that you don't always see. And so it was special to me to learn from Janice as our own Santa Clara Youth Poet Laureate, not Youth Poet Laureate. But I think that learning from her and the way that she created this program and the way it's grown has been like one of the best experiences for me. And our Youth Poet Laureate community is very tight-knit and close. And I have good friends there. And I think that intertwining makes me really happy. So I do see poetry as just like sitting everywhere in all these communities I get to be a part of. And I think I'm still learning, always learning from people like Janice and people who like introduced me and also welcomed me and believed in me and gave me that first step in order to help me like find my own leadership.
I think, yeah, it's really important, like I said, to have these positions accessible to our youth. And as a Vice Youth Poet Laureate, Sarah, what is it that you are doing or you have done in the role?
I've mostly been doing readings and supporting our community through my county's Youth Poet Laureate program. We work together to organize events like our kickoff event. And I think it's an interesting idea about like this transition from making your own work to sharing it to like being the arbiter of someone else's sharing. And I think I am grateful that that is part of my journey as a young poet. I think a lot of young poets, sometimes it's just the writing and it's just for yourself, which I think is important. And I went through that space too, just to learn from myself and to be with myself. But I think getting to share it and to be in spaces and make my own community has been the most fulfilling and has also been a part of learning about who I am and how I want to like teach other students and what my values are.
Yeah, I think some of the things that you said are so important for everyone to listen, Sarah. I only wish we had more youth poets also joining the group today and listening on, but I think it's important for each of us to listen to what our future generation and the present generation also, who is growing with us, doing. And my connecting question to that was, just as you said, creating that work, writing for yourself is so important and integral for your own growth. But sharing your work and making your space, making yourself known and discovering so many other things about yourself in that important position, in that leadership position that you're in. Any words of advice to a young poet who may be afraid to apply or doesn't know where to start from or how to prepare for this?
I would say don't give up, keep trying, go to the open mics, go in person because it's different when you go there, and don't pass up any opportunity, even if you think it's not going to be like your thing, just do it. And you won't regret it. Just keep going and it will come. And I know there's like always this feeling like it's only like gonna get worse from here. Or I've had those feelings where it's like, what if, what if like this is the best I'm ever gonna be, But I think that I would tell any youth poet it's not the best you're ever gonna be. And it's really only up from here. And it will. I think if you like keep writing and if like your heart is good, then good things will come.
Wonderful, Sarah. I think that is the kind of advice that will work for each of us, not just the youth poets, just not to give up and keep writing and keep going to open mics. So I hope more people hear that and come on to each of the open mics. So beautifully said. Thank you so much. Let's hear a couple more poems, shall we?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm gonna read one more poem. And this poem is, I think, reflecting on a different side of vulnerability. And I think poetry allowed me to see different parts of my life and the way that they come together in language, and even parts of it that seem distant from one another are actually so close. Nocturnes in the rain. Outside the restaurant, rain slicks red brick with its leaving. The girl and I lean against this wall, watching maple trees bow their heads as if trying to sing. The gesture small but certain. A man pulls out of the parking lot in his small red car, turning off the headlights to ride into the dark, his hands steering themselves, the engine weeping. For years I covered my ears while I spoke, afraid of what I might discover if I listened. Sometimes sound gives us too much. Like how across the street, a man with dark hair and pale skin plays the nocturnes of Chopin on a street piano, squeezing his eyes shut, as if remembering. In every song he plays, I too find something in myself, the girl, each note a crease of soft skin, her fingers still clinging to my coat. Each note a blue vein inside her wrist, rippling like water. What a child learns when bathing themselves for the first time. How to wake, to see the body's want for what it is, for what it has been. The girl presses her cheek against mine, and for the first time I understand why I move closer, my lips grazing her neck.
Oh, simply sublime, Sarah. Thank you so much for that piece as well. And it reminds me of one of your interviews that I read online, where you said, I'll quote you. I think one thing that drew me to poetry was that I never felt rushed. I always felt that I could move at my own pace, and that sort of helps me unlock and unpack my struggles. And we can see that you definitely take your time in reading and in writing the pieces that you just shared. So I see that much of your poetry explores selfhood, cultural belonging, and addresses the struggle and loss that radiates from this hyphenated identity as a Muslim American. I'd like to know, what was it like growing up as a South Asian Muslim American, and do you feel as a young person, and especially as a young poet, you can voice yourself differently about these matters through your poetry?
I think I learned that my identity was not hyphenated, and I learned that it was whole and it was already complete and it wasn't broken up. And I love what you said. I do think that language helped me realize that And I remember in my poetry bios, you can still find them online, and I would be like, I'm a South Asian, or I'm a brown Muslim American woman, or I'd say something along those lines. And then I read this other Muslim poet, and I saw her, and she was just like, in her bio, she just said she's the daughter of Indian Muslim immigrants. And I was like, I love that. And I started using that to refer to myself. And I was thinking about that because I remember the first little literary things I was writing. I didn't know how to identify myself, and it just felt like there was too much. I remember thinking, like, how many commas can I put here? And it just like all felt so difficult. And my parents like didn't have experience with writing or anything like that. It just felt like I was doing something totally new. But I think I've learned from other poets and the way they are unabashed, and the way they hold their identity as a wholeness instead of a hyphenation, which I love, and which I'm still learning from. I think I'm learning that wholeness, but I think poetry has helped me a lot with navigating through language, how I feel.
Yeah, I think so much of it resonates with me as well, Sarah. And as much as we use certain labels or terms to define ourselves or to define other people, I think all of us in some way or the other are a hyphenated identity. There is a certain duality or intersectionality in our identity that exists no matter where we come from, or where we are born, and the places we move at. And I think that it's important for each of us to slowly discover ourselves, and poetry is a wonderful medium to find yourself again and again. And I'm really glad that you have been able to do that, and through you, those who are watching you, listening to you, are able to do that as well. Do you have another poem to share, or should I go ahead with the next question I have?
You can go ahead with the next question.
Okay, yeah, maybe after this question, you can share one more poem, and that'll be great, or a couple more.
Sounds good.
So, my other question was that your numerous accolades and publications reflect a great amount of diligence, perseverance, and determination. How is it to balance being a poet, a Vice Youth Poet Laureate, and being a student all at the same time? That's certainly a lot, I feel, and would love to know the secret behind it.
I worked really hard. I wanted to make the most of my art and my high school experience. And I'm lucky that I found something that I love so much, because I think going into high school, I didn't really know. I knew, I liked language, but I didn't know where I could find a home in it. And then I figured it out. And once I knew poetry was there, I think I kept writing, and it didn't feel like hard work. It just felt like something that really nourishes me. But looking back, because I'm ending high school and going to college soon, I've been thinking a lot about it, and I am like proud of the work that I put into my art. And I do think that the times where I'm writing a lot are times when I feel like more settled in myself. So I think it helps me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I think it is certainly exemplary, and in the work that you're doing. And I think you definitely need a certain kind of intentionality, as you say, or a drive to really pursue something that you love, and it's visible in your work. So I'm really happy that that we have youth around us who are making the most of everything they have around, and also taking in all the resources, or finding access to information, which is so important, I think, for each of us to just move on ahead. Let's hear a couple more poems before we close with another final question I have for you.
This next set, I think, makes me think a lot about America and my place in it, and my family's place in it, in the post 9/11 climate. And I think that there's like a point in my poems where I could feel myself like repeatedly reaching towards that feeling of like uncertainty and that tenuousness that came with like being a Muslim family in that climate. This poem is called Halal Store. Amma and I are soft-limbed and just enough. Sweat sticky like the meat splayed out in front of us, growing under greasy lights the same color as our faces. When the butcher grips the meat, he rips the fat the same way a white man strips our dawn, with his fist, a pounding at the door of our mosque. I want to stop comparing nourishment to violence. He wraps the meat in plastic, suffocating, a mouth still gasping for breath. This is a child born from the closeness between the word skin and sin. This shop, where I whisper the word home to Amma and she understands, drinks the sound from its middle like a lantern drinking lights. Still, I language this home into what I know. A swath of dark red, the door shutting like an eye. And while we ride the bus, 2 hours to get back home, I trace English words I learned in school on her wrist, foreign and saltless as a dream. Country daughter, country daughter. A white man kicks the back of her seat. Alma lurches forwards, all the English vowels scattering into a wilt. At night, Alma simmers the meat in coriander and yogurt, a dash of chili powder plumping in her hand like sleep. She holds the cooked meat out to me at the dinner table, and I bring it to my hands like a face. You. The next,
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I'm going to read one more poem. This poem is called Ruh, and I remember quite vividly writing it, and I just remember all of it coming out like a flood. And usually my poems take like a whole day, or even figuring out what I want to say takes a long time. But this poem, it was just all came, and I feel like it was like it just like flooded out in the best way. After Fatima Asghar. In my mother's first language, Ra means both breath and word, how thoughts start and finish. Ru means the softest opening of lip, ripple of tongue, means beginnings and ends feel the same in my mother's throat, means she believes we move only in circles, mouths folding into themselves, vowels shaped like breaths, shaped like prayers. means when the white man at Trader Joe's tells her, "Shut the fuck up," shaking his red fist, my mother flounders, clenches her throat, lips pressed like the bud of a flower, starves herself of both air and story. My mother squeezes raw, because when her body trembles, all that is left, the shadow of a sticky short homeland, all that is left, the mouth she was born from.
Wow, I'm quite speechless and mesmerized, still taking in all the words and such vivid imagery that you have in there, intricately woven through those words, superbly penned, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as a final question, I have for you is, as your Vice Youth Poet Laureate term concludes this year, and so does your senior year at high school, as you said, what is next for you?
College is next. I am really excited to study literature, and I think that I feel blessed to be able to go to a new place, and I want to experience all 4 seasons and immerse myself in this art in a new place. I think that as a poet, change is like a heavy word and a good one, and I think that I'm glad for this change. I'm excited, and I don't know exactly what comes next, but I'm excited to go somewhere new and to keep sharing poetry and to find poetry not only in the words I read, but in the experiences I have with my friends and with other people. That's what I'm most excited for.
Thank you. Well, you said it all, and I think we are all just taking in everything that you've just offered. Thank you for doing and sharing such exceptional work. And I say your poems are fierce and tender and hopeful, bearing witness to such complex emotions and experiences as a youth growing up in this world. And I'm certain that many more people and many more youth will find inspiration in you as you go on. And I'd just like to wish you more love and more power and all the success in your future endeavors as a student and a poet. And yeah, let me open up the floor briefly for questions or comments from the audience before we close this segment. If anyone would like to unmute themselves and talk to Sarah, please go ahead.
Sarah, I'm humbled. I truly am. I mean, that was brilliant work. I was writing some really bad doggerel, probably about the age that you were creating this brilliance. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say and read, and hope I get to see a lot more of it. So thank you very much. And I'll say it again when I read, which I get to be next to the last. So truly humbled.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you to say.
Sarah, this is Connie Tettenborn. My camera doesn't work, but you did an excellent job reading your work. It was really read well, and excellent imagery, great poetry.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Just want to say thank you. And you're so inspiring to hear. I'm so glad I got this chance to hear you read. Your poems are beautiful in their imagery, but also the depth of the love you bring to both the poem itself, the subject that you're treating, and the reader is a wonderful wonderful thing you're weaving there. So just keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. That means a lot to me.
Well, I just want to, can I say a few words? Can you hear me? Yeah, well, just want to say very well written, very well read. You have a very good sense of the breath and sound and the spacing. And as Monica and other people have already pointed out, a very good sense of how the thoughts flow, and just very impressive for your age. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Yay.
I think, Leo, you would like to unmute yourself, and please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Monica. I had a question. I have a friend that she's saying that for her, Ramadan kind of starts out a little bit tumultuous, a little difficult, but then at a certain point, she kind of feels more sublime and her mind clears a little. And I was wondering if you experienced something similar, and if so, how does it impact your writing during Ramadan?
Yeah, so I actually don't fast during Ramadan, but I do celebrate good meals with my family. And I think that is a time for me to just like immerse and sit in my ancestry and my roots. And my very favorite dinners are Eid, where my mom makes my favorite biryani, and I think there's that feeling that you like come from more than yourself. I think sometimes, like in writing poetry and being from a family who, like, we're all still learning, and having parents who don't have English as their first language, it feels like I'm trying to do something new sometimes. But then when I experience these cultural spaces like Eid and Ramadan, I feel like I remember that no, there's like so many people, there's like my roots and everything, every like woman who has come before me, and they're all with me, and I'm glad for that, like, solidarity. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to very quickly add that I was impressed with your craft and how you combined the seriousness of subject matter with very gentle but precise insights. It's a really unique way to express, and I appreciated that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's so wonderful to hear all the kind praise and the exact same feelings and the reaction that I had. I see that coming through from all of you. When I first heard Sarah, I'm still in awe of her and in great admiration of her work. So I'm really happy that it's you all feel the same and so much more. Thank you again, Sarah, for being here, and congratulations on all your achievements. I'm hoping that you've had a grand time reading for us as part of the National Poetry Month. And I'm really proud, all of us are proud of you representing the youth and the voices today. And I'm really hoping that you enjoyed this conversation with me tonight as well.
Thank you so much, Monica, for inviting me, and to everyone who was so supportive of my work, like in the chat. I think that means a lot to me, and yeah, I really enjoyed reading my work today, and I'm excited for our open mic.
Well, thank you so much for keep that humility and genius in your work going, and we'll look forward to more of it. But I'll call upon you once again at the end of our open mic segment. For now, you can just enjoy and listen. And yeah, with that, we are going to stop recording this segment. Those of you who are in the Zoom room, please stay online for the open mic segment of the evening. To the YouTube audience, thanks for joining in, and hope to see you for next month's virtual Belmont Poetry Night. Good night.